Steve Horn's joining us now. Happy to have Steve here. Maybe he can make me feel better, but I doubt it because we're going to talk. Hi, Steve. Thanks for coming.
Probably not.
Probably
Never.
not.
I'm just kidding.
Well, you know, we want the truth, right? We have another presidential debate tonight, as I was just saying in the break. And if it looks anything like the last one, we're probably not going to hear anything about policy. But even so, last debate, they did manage to sway the opinions of voters on at least one major issue: fracking, hydraulic fracturing, aka fracking, which involves shooting fluid into the earth to fracture shale rock, fluid laced with lots of chemicals, by the way. Then they just leave that down there because that's not going to come back to hurt anyone anyway. And that's how they get out the natural gas. As Biden and Harris go on the defensive, Data for Progress shows that support for banning fracking among even regular Democrats, not just the progressive ones, it's on the decline, right?
Yeah, that was, I was pretty shocked by that. I didn't know that. Just like, I mean, you wonder, I don't know if I don't know how representative that is, but that was definitely troubling polling. Like it shows that, you know, people are very dependent on like what their quote unquote leaders are telling them about the issue. And it's, yeah, it dropped like 15, 16, 17% since the debates started. So it shows that even the rhetoric of Biden and Harris on this is, I mean, I think if they said the opposite thing, like in 3 months, then probably those people would go back on the other side, a lot of them. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of troubling from actually a different point of view, is like, don't people have I don't want to bemoan the quote unquote people, but
go ahead and bemoan.
I'll briefly bemoan, which is to say, don't, you would hope that people could, and I think maybe it's a failure of the climate movement and maybe journalists to put it on me. You know,
no, it's not our fault that people are just like, wait, I like fracking because Biden likes fracking.
I know we've tried as hard as possible. No, I guess I mean, I'm not going to put too much, but I think you would hope that people have views independent on the issues of just what a candidate is saying about them, right? Like that's the troubling part, you know, how, but I mean, I think it shows there's at least a large portion of the country that still maybe just doesn't know a ton about the issues. I mean, I think maybe the positive takeaways are still work to be done, but it's
one of the, we don't, that doesn't, you don't seem convinced that there's like maybe there's, but well, one of the things that in the earlier segment, we watched a little bit of one of the speeches that President Obama made yesterday, which was powerful. And God, I miss him, even though he was going to forward the TPP with no environmental regulations and giving the investor state, rights away. And when are we going to grow up and be able to hold differing opinions on different policies and still pick a best candidate who doesn't keep a kid in a cage? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, like the Republicans can do that. They're like, well, it's fine that Trump rapes women and keeps kids in a cage, but he's on my side on abortion, so I'm just going to pick that guy. You know, how come Democrats can't do that? We're an all or nothing group here. You have to be a saint or you're out.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, right? Like once you start, it's the opposite. Once you start, you're saying even if you start down the line of policy critiques, there's a lot of don't say that. You know, you get accused of well, you don't support him. I mean, this is a kind of rewinding back to the Obama days that happened a whole lot.
It's happening now. People are like, Biden was terrible on this issue. I'm like, Trump's a fascist. I'm still going to vote for him, even though I'm against fracking.
Absolutely, yeah. I can see it from that vantage point too. But I think that fast forward like 2-3 months from now, we'll say 3, if depending on if the inauguration happens and Biden's the president. Like, I think it will be interesting to see what if that kind of dynamic changes. I think that we are still probably going to see a lot. There's still, I think progressives are going to take a different posture towards the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration compared to the early days of the Obama one. But that said, it shows that I don't think that it's useful. Maybe it's because of the weird election dynamics. Everyone wants to beat Trump, so they want to be quiet about the critiques of Biden, but it shows, I think this is a case in point. It shows that when you don't speak up on the issues loudly during these kind of key moments, that it does sway public opinion in ways that are bad for the causes that you care about, whether it's fracking or, if there's something else that was, so much in the limelight, it probably would have changed things too. But yeah, this is a really good case study of like silence doesn't pay off on these kind of issues. It's the opposite.
I have my own personal fear about, I've had very radical people emailing me and saying, don't tell anyone, but I'm going to vote for Biden because I live in a purple state. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And you don't, yeah, I totally get that. So, I mean, the Real News Network where you are our climate reporter, you have a lot of radical viewers who otherwise would never vote for a Joe Biden centrist candidate. Is that accurate? So I think some of us in the news media, myself included, are concerned that those people who are so righteous in their vote that they can't bring themselves to vote for Joe Biden. And then, you get called like a vote shamer. They can't bring themselves to vote for Joe Biden against Donald Trump. And therefore they're just helping hand the election to Trump. I don't know. What do you say to those folks? There's a fear, I think, in independent media that we are triggering off those people by covering any negative part of the other candidates.
Well, I think, the way that we did a segment on this probably, and maybe you've covered it this way as well with other guests, but basically, right, like the whole, just the stark reality is the whole thing is it's literally elect Biden to fight Biden, because like it's a fight where you can probably get some win. I mean, maybe if it's not even complete wins, some concessions, right? But you're going to get
Kamala Harris has been on record saying she doesn't like fracking. So, and we're watching this SCOTUS thing happen where Amy Coney Barrett is like, I don't have any opinions on anything and I can't possibly comment. But we look at her past and we say she clearly has opinions. And I think people who are concerned about fracking can look at least Kamala Harris's past and say, well, she clearly has opinions. Oops, sorry, Steve, where'd you go? And we're gonna keep her feet to the fire on that. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I would say you can use the Amy Coney Barrett hearings and the prospect of a Justice Amy Coney Barrett in the next months to say, like, if Biden loses and Trump is still the president, then there's going to be a lot more ACBs in federal courts, at the lower level, and that's kind of what's already happening, right? So that's going to have huge long-term repercussions on any kind of, if you care about environmental protection and something comes before the court, like those judges don't care about those kind of, for the most part, don't care about those kind of arguments and are going to take the hard line on whatever a corporation wants, wherever their point of view is. That's where they're coming from. These are, Federalist Society judges. I think that it's it's kind of all happening at warp speed, but it's definitely a good case study of, I guess elections have quote unquote consequences. I really hate that term, but it's kind of become so clear in the past weeks. I mean, years, but I mean, you can October has been a good teachable because stuff is happening so quickly in a different way where Trump is still actively really using the White House much more maybe than other presidents would. So you can see it in real time.
Steve Horn, Real News Network climate correspondent. I haven't even asked you the questions that we're here to ask, and we're going to be brave and talk about fracking. And with that said, I mean, Trump is definitely going to be pro-fracking. It's not like Trump's going to stop fracking. He's not even going to listen to people who might want to stop fracking. So with that said, let's talk about fracking. For the viewers who are less familiar, can you remind everyone what fracking is, why it's so hazardous to the environment and our health?
Sure. Yeah. So fracking is a technique that has been around for decades, but really went to the commercial scale about 15 years ago after the passage of the Energy Policy Act of 2005 under Bush and Cheney, where it was they had an energy policy task force, they called it, where they met with executives for months and months and got the thing signed. It was basically the industry wish list, the whole bill, but part of it was something called the Halliburton Loophole, as it's called, because Dick Cheney was the former executive at Halliburton, and Halliburton does fracking. And so basically what fracking is that this horizontal drilling process in which water and chemicals are injected under the ground, sometimes at a length of a mile down, a mile horizontally. And it's caused all kinds of water contamination issues across the United States. And that ties back to that bill, because basically the bill was the industry admitting we can't do this. And what the bill did was exempted the industry from EPA enforcement of the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. And it was the industry admitting basically we can't do this without contaminating aquifers, underground water reservoirs throughout the country. And so that was what gave it the green light. That's why they couldn't do it for so long. They had the technology since the 70s or 80s, but they didn't have the legislative apparatus. And 15 years later, we still haven't reversed the Halliburton loophole. That was one of the things, actually, to compare 2020 to 2016. Hillary Clinton was actually actively campaigning. It was a debate between Bernie and Hillary. Hillary was still saying we need to reverse the Halliburton loophole. Bernie was saying we need to ban fracking, but like this time around, it's kind of none of that. It's actually we support fracking, kind of like from the Biden camp, and I think it's goes to where's fracking happening, because that's the big thing here, which is Pennsylvania, exactly, and that's the battleground state, and Ohio. Those are two huge fracking states. Pennsylvania way bigger, but Ohio is
I don't understand why they don't recognize that, like, people have been hurt by fracking. Are there not as many people hurt than there are who work in the industry? Like, did they count?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many people who in both states who are outraged by the impacts. There's people who've been displaced in both states because of the impacts of fracking around their homes. So I just feel like I wish I had some video of those, what was going around when fracking was on the main part of people's minds, the tap water catching on fire. Yep. The tap water being just like filled with particulate matter, all of that stuff. Yeah, to rewind, that's just the 10-year anniversary of that kind of the clip coming to the public attention span, because that was the release of the movie Gasland. So that was where that clip you're talking about. Yeah, it's 10 years old already. But yeah, I think the calculation has probably been, the industry has a lot of money. So if you go up against the industry in those states, they'll pour in a lot of money against you. That's probably part of the calculation. The other part is, of course, there's at least pretty well-connected unions in those states who are connected to the industry. And so those are also supporters of Biden and Harris. So I think it's a two-pronged calculation. So I think that the community concerns have gotten brushed to the side. I also feel like you just brought up a good point, which is it's kind of slipped from the public consciousness just how traumatic the industry experience has been for those on the front lines in those states. I mean, it's a huge issue, like 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago during the election cycle. But then I think since the Trump experience has been so crazy, it's been its own form of trauma. We've kind of lost sight of just that the industry is still having atrocious community impacts, water impacts.
I mean, I think that they're making an excellent calculation here. It's unfortunate that people are like, okay, fine, we'll just support fracking to follow along, but the calculation is environmentalists are not going to vote for Trump. So exactly. If they can suck in some other, working voters saying that, then yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's plain and simple. Yeah, that's the calculation. I think that they're probably right. And I think that gets to the step, the next step, which is what does it mean? Like come, I don't know, January, February, March, the first months in office. Like, does that mean that does the climate movement still have room to push them to stop doing what they're doing? Do they have, can they still get wins? I think it remains to be seen. I think that they probably do, but I mean, an election is an election, right? Like you kind of say what you have to say and do what you have to do to win. It doesn't necessarily.
People are smart enough to be like, gee, Kamala Harris was like signed onto the Green New Deal. I mean, did she just change her mind all of a sudden? I think it was a very smart pick, because Biden can be like, listen, I'm Mr. Business Credit Card centrist. Nothing's really going to change in terms of corporate. We're going to deal with the pandemic. We're going to reestablish our ties in international, organizations, but it's going to still be business as usual. And then you have Harris, who is more progressive. Your thoughts about that?
I guess it depends on how much space he gives. I don't know which issues he defers to Harris and how much space he gives her. But I mean, I think I definitely agree with your assessment that she's.
But in 4 years, she's going to be running for president again.
Right.
So
that's that's could be an opportunity, or that could be a peril, right? Like depending on what kind of calculations she's making in her own mind, and depending on, I think this gets to the key. Where does the rubber meet the road here? Which is, who are they going to surround themselves with when they come to the White House? Like who's going to be the head of the EPA? Who's going to be the head? I mean, in particular here, who's going to be the head of like the Department of Interior? Who's going to be the head of the Department of Energy?
I think it's a step forward that they might even have a head.
yeah, good point. Yeah, but yeah, I think I think that's going to be where the first fights are going to happen at that level within the climate movement and within the activist community, which is personnel is policy, right? Which we saw during the Obama administration too. I think the big characters here are people like Ernest Moniz is going to be probably a name that's floated. He's already a huge advisor. I think we've talked about him before, but yeah, former Secretary of Energy, second term of Obama, huge huge Biden advisor. Potentially, his name is being floated as I don't know if there's anything official about it, but I think progressives at least think his name will be floated to head up the DOE again, the Department of Energy. So things like that will be, first and foremost, from November onward, if Biden wins, fighting bad nominees the same way that bad nominees are, we talked about Amy Coney Barrett. I think the same kind of fights will ensue for nominees at different levels for the cabinet and other agencies.
Oh, I can't. 2 more weeks. And then we'll know which way the fight's going to be, right? And
we'll see. And we'll see what happens. Yeah, and I think that's its own Pandora's box. Who knows if the lunatic who's in the White House right now will accept the election results, and I think still so much is up in the air, right?
And how he'll, basically grab the spark plugs on the way out. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's what I think too. Yeah, I think that's. We saw, from a progressive standpoint, we saw Obama do some probably more progressive things at the very end that he could do from the administrative level. I have a fear that Trump would do some pretty grotesque things in those last months on his way out the door in the opposite direction.
Yes, it's not looking good for a happy winter. So we've got the debate tonight. How do you think Biden should proceed on the topic of fracking and on the campaign trail in general in order to maintain voters in key places like we discussed, Pennsylvania and Ohio, without changing the long-term impact on voters' opinions about fracking? How can he do it?
Well, I think the opinion thing, I think it's going to have an impact, right? Like we're going to, at least people, there's going to be a segment of the electorate who's just going to say, they think it's bad or good. Okay, well, we go along with it. I think the important thing is like the reason why that's happening is because the other side, the anti-fracking side, who's part of the progressive movement, has basically stood down, right? They're kind of being cautious about having too public and loud critiques right now of Biden and Harris, but I think that will change in November. I would say that expect to be disappointed by whatever answer he gives on fracking tonight. But that's
Steve, I'm concerned that there's this part of the media that I think you and I are both involved in here that makes honest critiques of both parties. And we're going to have, hopefully, if all goes well, 4 years at least of a Biden administration, where all of the news is going to, including the left-wing media, lefter than the centrist media, is going to be critiquing the Democratic Party and what the Democrats are doing. Now, in 4 years, that either opens us up to another Trump, a worse Trump, or possibly a better progressive, but it doesn't seem like that's been useful. It doesn't seem like that's been successful. And Bernie Sanders is getting up in age. I don't know if he's going to be a viable candidate. We have other candidates we could possibly run who are very progressive. But what are your thoughts on the fact that the media, both sets of media, the right-wing media and the left media, are going to turn on the Democrats if Biden wins? He will have no support.
Oh man, I think I'll still have plenty of support. I wouldn't worry about that. I'll still have MSNBC and CNN, and probably won't have Fox News. But yeah, if you remember back to the Obama era, there was not a whole lot of criticism from MSNBC, and in particular, we'll use them as a case study of Obama. They were kind of like you could almost, I think that's where they got the term MSDNC, right? Like we're a lot of so I wouldn't worry. I think that people like us and people who I think it's, I mean, you maintain your principles, right? I think that I see what you mean. Like, could it have like this ramification that in 4 years it empowers some like far right wing candidates? Does Trump come back?
No, but it dampens the vote. Like, I'm thinking about certain people. I'm not going to name any names, but it really dampens. It dampens. But my concern is that progressives who are super progressive won't be able to vote for the next Biden or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
I see what you mean. I think the one part of the calculation also is that there's going to be a midterm right in between. So that's going to have its own dynamics and its own impacts on what gets covered. And I think that, the other important thing is to people like us is like focus on stuff that's not only Biden, right? Like there's interesting stuff happening in other areas, other seats, and even like at the city level or at the state level. I think that breaks you out of only. I think it's easy to get that myopia about like, here's what the White House is doing, here's like the bad thing. But I think that you can break out of that and like channel people to more interesting.
I was thinking that I would when I do cover the White House and Biden, I would say things like, and remember before Biden was Trump. So this is way better, even though this is not good. This is better than what would be happening right now if you had voted for Trump. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm very hopeful, and just very, very hopeful, and just hoping. Again, maybe not hopeful, but hoping for a Biden win, and that we can change our fight to be something that's not just stopping fascism, but building the kind of world that that you and I have been both working for. So I thank you for coming on, Steve. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say my final thought would be, of course, like Biden will probably not always take the lead on some of these issues. I think a lot of the fights are still going to be at the state level, right? Like if he sees other states doing stuff, or, in particular states, probably maybe local's a little too small, but if there's major trends happening in different states, that's going to be the lead that Biden and Harris follow. For example, they'll probably be looking a lot at California, especially because that's where Harris hails from. So I think that, that's going to be just as important, I think, in the years to come, as what's happening in different communities, if you will, meaning states. But yeah, so that's just something that definitely always keep the eye on the ball on what's happening, not only in Washington, D.C.
It's so interesting that you brought up that she's from the left coast. When's the last time someone from the left coast was possibly on the way to the White House?
1980? Was it Reagan? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's
yeah. Well,
right from the left. I mean, a real left.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Well, thank you.
Thanks so much. Steve Horn from the Real News Network. You can follow him at Steve A. Horn, which you see right over there underneath his name. You're watching Act TV. I'm Julianna Forlano. Thanks so much for joining us today. Again, please subscribe. Good luck if you watch the debate tonight. I am not on tomorrow, although James is going to be not on, but he's going to be doing a video. James and I did the debate takedown after the last one, or the last two ago. So look for that piece here on Act TV on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, thank you very much. Don't forget to share our page, like, subscribe. And if you're watching on Twitch, thank you. And we look forward to interacting with you more on Twitch very, very soon. That's it for today. I will see you next week when we have Dean Baker coming on, Sasha Abramsky coming on, some of our good old regulars, Carlos Mark Vera, the co-founder and executive director of Pay Our Interns, is coming on. The president of Emerge is coming on. We got a lot of good stuff coming. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.